What if I told you that the busiest spot on the lake, the one with all the ice shanties clustered together, is probably the worst place you could possibly fish? It sounds crazy, right? We've all been taught that if you see a crowd, that's where the fish are. But today, we're going to expose why that's a massive mistake, an error that 90% of ice anglers make every single winter. And yes, you're probably making it too. Stick around, because I promise that by the end of this video, you'll understand why your auger has been getting a workout, but your bucket has been staying empty. We're going to uncover the simple truth that could completely change your success on the ice. So, let me ask you this before we dive in. When you get to the lake, do you head for the crowd or do you head for solitude? Be honest. Let me know in the comments. For generations, the wisdom has been passed down. Find other fishermen. It makes sense on the surface. It feels safe. It feels logical. You think, those guys must know something I don't. We've all done it. You drive onto the ice, scan the horizon, and see that little village of portable shelters and pickup trucks. It's like a magnet. You tell yourself that this many people can't be wrong. This has to be the spot. This habit is drilled into us from our very first ice fishing trip. We followed our dads or grandpas out to the community hole and we caught fish. But what we often forget is that fish populations, pressure, and patterns change. The methods that worked 30 years ago or even last year might be the very reason you're not getting bit today. We're stuck in a comfortable routine, and that routine is costing us fish. Let's paint the picture. It's 5:30 in the morning. The sky is just starting to turn grey. You pull up to the lake access, full of hope. You look out across that vast expanse of white, and you see it, a cluster of lights, way out in the distance. That's your destination. It's the community spot, the well-known reef, the famous underwater point. You make the drive out there, find a little space between a couple of other trucks, and you start to set up. There's a sense of camaraderie, a feeling that you're all in this together, chasing the same goal. It feels right. It feels productive. You're not wasting time searching. You've gone straight to where the action is supposed to be. This is the first step in the chain of events, the initial decision that sets the tone for the entire day. But it's a decision based on an assumption, and a very dangerous one at that. Now think about what happens next. You fire up that two-stroke or electric auger. It screams and rips through 20 inches of ice. That sound doesn't just stay on the surface. It travels through the ice and into the water column as a massive shockwave of vibration and noise. Every fish within a 100-yard radius just felt that. They're on high alert. Then you hear another auger start up 50 feet away, and another one after that. Then people are stomping around, scraping the ice with shovels, dropping gear. It's a constant bombardment of threatening signals from above. To a fish, especially a wary old walleye or a big crappie, this is the equivalent of a loud, unpredictable construction project starting right on their ceiling. Their natural instinct in the face of this perceived danger isn't to get curious and hungry. It's to either lock their jaws and refuse to eat, or to simply slide away to a quieter neighborhood. The logic that most people use is simple, and if there are this many people here, they must be catching fish. But this is fundamentally flawed. Let's be honest. How many times have you been in a crowd like that and seen very few fish actually being caught? It happens all the time. The more accurate statement is this. If there are this many people here, fish were probably caught here at some point in the past. That spot became a community hole for a reason. Maybe last week, someone had a great day there. They told their friends who told their friends, and the word spread. But fish, especially on public lakes, do not stick around when the pressure gets intense. They are constantly on the move, seeking food, comfort, and safety. The crowd is an indicator of history, not a guarantee of the present. So you've drilled your holes right in the middle of this shanty town. You get your flasher transducer in the water, and you mark nothing. Or maybe you see a few very sluggish marks right on the bottom that won't react to anything you drop down. These are the fish that are left over. They are either inactive, or they are so conditioned to the pressure that they refuse to bite. The active feeding fish did what any smart creature would do when their home got too noisy and chaotic. They moved. They didn't necessarily go far, but they slid off the top of that main structure. They moved to the nearest quiet water they could find. They are holding on the edges in the transition zones or on some subtle piece of structure nearby that everyone else is ignoring. You are sitting in the middle of an empty living room after the party has moved into the backyard. Here is the core mistake in all its glory. It's not about your bait choice, your line size, or how you're jigging. The mistake is fishing for fishermen, not fishing for fish. You used the location of other people as your primary signpost. You trusted the wisdom of the crowd over your own instincts and knowledge of fish behavior. You assumed that pressure doesn't affect fish, or that there are so many fish it doesn't matter. But it does matter more than anything else. On any given day, on any popular body of water, the single greatest factor influencing fish location and mood is fishing pressure. By joining the crowd, you have chosen to fish in the most difficult, high-pressure environment possible. You've stacked the odds against yourself before you even baited your hook. It's time to unlearn this habit and start thinking differently. So how do we fix this? It starts with a simple shift in your mindset the moment you arrive at the lake. Instead of seeing that crowd of anglers as a destination, see it for what it really is, a giant red flag. See it as a marker of highly pressured water. This is Zone 0, the area you want to actively avoid. Your new goal is not to find a spot within that group, but to use that group as a reference point to find the quiet, overlooked water nearby. The fish haven't vanished from the lake, they've just relocated to escape the chaos. Your job is to predict where they went. This requires a little more thought and a little more effort, but the payoff can be the difference between a zero-fish day and the best day of your season. It means being willing to walk a little farther and drill holes when nobody else is. Let's introduce a new concept. Instead of focusing on the spot, let's focus on the edge of the pressure. Imagine the community hole is a circle. Most anglers will be fishing somewhere inside that circle. The smart angler starts their search on the perimeter of that circle or even a good distance away from it. The fish that move off the main structure don't just swim off into the abyss. They relocate to the next closest piece of favorable structure or cover. This could be a secondary point, a small inside turn, a subtle weed edge, or a slightly deeper trough that runs adjacent to the main spot. These are the places that 90% of fishermen drive right over without a second thought on their way to join the main group. These are your new target zones. Your map is no longer just a depth chart, it's a pressure chart. Think about a classic mid-lake hump that always attracts a crowd. Everyone is focused on drilling their holes right on the very top of it, where it comes up to, say, 15 feet of water. This is where they believe the fish should be. But after a few hours of augers and truck traffic, the active walleyes or perch have pushed off the top. Where did they go? They probably just slid down the side of the hump into 20 or 25 feet of water. Or they moved to the saddle that connects that hump to another one 100 yards away. While everyone else is competing for space on the peak, you can have the entire slope or saddle all to yourself, and that's very likely where the unpressured, feeding fish are now holding. It's a simple, logical adjustment that puts your bait in front of fish that haven't seen a lure all morning. This doesn't mean you have to go on a wild goose chase to the most remote corner of the lake. We're talking about small, strategic adjustments. Let's use another example. There's a long tapering point that everyone loves to fish. The shanty town is set up right on the last third of the point, where it drops off into the basin. That's the obvious spot. But instead of joining them, look at your map. Is there a small inside turn halfway back up the point? A little cup or divot that only changes the depth by 2 or 3 feet? That's a classic holding spot for fish trying to get away from commotion. Nobody is there because it doesn't look as good or as dramatic as the main drop-off. Drill your holes there. You are still fishing the same general structure, but you are targeting the fish that have been pushed out of the primary zone. You don't need expensive, high-tech electronics to apply this strategy. A simple paper map of the lake or a basic GPS app on your phone is more than enough. The key isn't seeing the fish on a screen. The key is understanding how fish react to pressure and using the map to predict their new location. Use the crowd as your guide for where not to be. See that cluster of shacks? Open your map and look at what structure is within a 100 to 200 yard radius of them. Is there a small finger off the main flat? A little rock pile that doesn't show up on older maps? A weed line that everyone else is ignoring? These are your starting points. Go there. Be the only one there. The confidence you gain when you find active fish in a spot that you discovered yourself is 10 times more satisfying. Let's talk about the psychological part of this. It takes courage to break away from the pack. It feels weird to be the lone wolf drilling holes in what looks like the middle of nowhere while the party is happening a quarter mile away. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll feel the urge to give up and go join the crowd just in case they suddenly start catching fish. You have to fight that urge. You have to trust the strategy. Remember that silence and solitude are your allies in ice fishing. Every hole you drill in quiet water is an ambush point. The fish below aren't on high alert. They haven't seen a dozen different lures in the past hour. Your presentation is new and interesting to them. You have a massive advantage over every single angler fishing back in that noisy, chaotic community hole. This strategy works for every species. Crappies, for example, are notorious for suspending in basins. When a community hole forms over a known brush pile or crib, the pressure can push those fish out of the cover. They might suspend just 20 or 30 yards away over open water. They feel safer there. Anglers pounding the cover itself are spooking more fish than they're catching, but you, drilling holes just off to the side, can intercept these less pressured fish. For perch, it's the same story. A big school might be using a mud flat. The crowd finds them, and the pressure scatters them. They don't leave the flat, they just spread out. By fishing the fringes, you find the smaller, more aggressive pods that have broken off from the main, spooked school. Consider this a real-world case study. I was on a popular walleye lake. The main reef, about a half-mile from shore, looked like a small city. There were at least 50 trucks and portables on it. I knew fishing there would be a grind. So I looked at my map and saw a very subtle, secondary reef top about 300 yards away. It was much smaller and only came up to about 30 feet, compared to the main reef's 15. Nobody was there. It took me 10 minutes to drive over. My first hole I marked a fish instantly. I dropped down and caught a nice 20-inch walleye. I caught 3 more in the next hour while watching the city on the main reef. I guarantee you the people over there were catching very little. I wasn't smarter, I just chose to fish for fish instead of following fishermen. This approach also forces you to become a better angler. When you fish alone, away from the crowd, you have to rely on your own skills. You pay more attention to your electronics. You learn to read transition zones. You become more observant of what's happening under the ice because there are no other distractions. It makes you more deliberate and more methodical. You're not just dropping a line and hoping for the best. You're executing a plan based on a clear, logical strategy. You start to build a database of your own spots, your Plan B and Plan C locations that you can rely on when the community holes are crowded and unproductive. This is how you evolve from a casual angler into a consistently successful one. The beauty of this is that it works through all phases of the winter. During early ice, when fish can be aggressive, finding a quiet spot away from the initial rush can be incredible. During the midwinter doldrums, when fish are notoriously sluggish, getting away from pressure is even more critical. A pressured negative fish is nearly impossible to catch, but an unpressured negative fish is often willing to eat a well-presented bait because it's the only one it has seen all day. And during late ice, when fish start moving and feeding heavily before the spawn, they often use secondary, less obvious routes and staging areas that the crowds completely overlook. At every stage, avoiding the herd gives you a distinct advantage. Let's be clear about what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you should never fish a well-known spot. Those spots are popular for a reason. They are prime fish habitat. The key is how and when you fish them. If you can be the first one there in the morning before the crowds arrive, do it. If you can fish it on a Tuesday when everyone else is at work, perfect. But on a busy Saturday, your strategy should be to use that spot as a starting point for your search, not as your final destination. Fish the edges, fish the nearby, less obvious structure. Let the crowd spook the fish towards you. You're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. It's a fundamental shift in how you view the layout of the lake. The next time you head out, I want you to try an experiment. Go to the lake and identify the main community hole. But instead of joining it, commit to fishing at least 200 yards away from the edge of that group for the first 2 hours of your day. Use your map to pick a plausible spot in that zone. It could be a small finger, a weed edge, or just a different depth contour. Give it an honest try. Drill a few holes, be quiet, and fish them hard. Pay attention to your electronics and your surroundings. Even if you don't load the boat, I'm willing to bet you'll see more signs of life, more marks on your flasher, more curious fish than the guys sitting in the middle of all that chaos. This little experiment might just open your eyes for good. Think about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For many anglers, that's their entire winter season. They go to the same crowded spot every weekend, complain about the slow bite, and then come back the next weekend and do it all over again. You have to be the one to break the cycle. It requires a conscious decision to ignore your instincts to follow the herd. It's about having the confidence to trust that you know where the fish should be based on pressure rather than just going where everyone else is. The best anglers I know are almost always fishing by themselves, far away from the easily accessible, well-known community holes. This one change in strategy has a cascading effect. Because you're fishing in a quiet area, your presentations are more effective. The fish are more relaxed and more likely to investigate your lure. Because you're not competing with 50 other lines in the water, your bait gets more attention. Because you found the spot yourself, you have a better understanding of why the fish are there, which helps you choose the right lure and presentation. It all connects. The simple decision to avoid the crowd is the first domino to fall, leading to a chain reaction that ends with more fish on the ice. It's the single biggest leap you can make in your ice fishing journey, and it costs absolutely nothing. All it takes is a change in perspective. So, to put it all together, the massive mistake that 90% of anglers make is equating the presence of other fishermen with the presence of active fish. They are chasing a ghost. They are fishing in the most pressured, least productive water on the entire lake. The solution is to flip the script. View the crowd as a warning sign. Use it as a point of reference to find quieter, overlooked water nearby. Target the edges, the secondary structure, and the transition zones. Have the courage to fish alone and trust your own plan. This is the secret. It's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. The choice is yours. Do you want to fish, or do you just want to be near other people fishing? So there you have it. The big secret isn't a secret at all. The mistake is following the crowd. It's drilling your holes based on where other trucks are parked instead of where the fish are likely to be. The real aha moment, the turning point, is when you realize that a crowd of fishermen is an indicator of where the fish were yesterday, not where they are today. Active, catchable fish will almost always move away from noise and commotion. By simply shifting your focus to the quiet edges and the overlooked secondary spots just a few hundred yards away, you step into a whole different world. You're no longer competing with dozens of other anglers for the attention of a few spooked fish. Instead, you're presenting your bait to unpressured, relaxed fish that are far more likely to bite. This one single change in your approach can and will transform your entire ice fishing season. Thank you so much for watching. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a great day by deliberately avoiding the crowd? Share that story in the comments below. I want to hear about your lone wolf successes.